what are you doing?
Oh, hey, father-in-law, it's been a while.
How dare you? You're totally unfit to be a daughter-in-law. Have some shame.
Wearing my hat indoors, my father-in-law berated me with a stern face. Amid the tension, all eyes from the relatives were cold and detached. On the other hand, only my mother-in-law glared at me as if I was an annoyance. It seemed like I'm not welcomed by Mark's family, but I won't bend to that atmosphere. The time for my revenge has finally come. My name is Tina, and I'm 28 years old. I studied abroad in Japan during college, and after graduating I landed a job at an international corporation. I met my current husband, Mark, when I was 25. We dated for 2 years and got married 2 months ago. We rented an apartment somewhere midway between our workplaces, and thus our newlywed life began. Although Mark is a year younger than me, he's mature and considerate. Plus, he deeply respects my experience of studying in Japan. Mark often tells me how awesome I am.
Tina, you're truly amazing. Not just at work, but you're also fluent in Japanese.
It's not that big deal. I studied abroad, so the least I could do is speak the language.
But studying abroad is no small feat, and you did it for a whole year. I really think it's incredible.
Thank you. I'm really glad to hear that from you, Mark.
I've never really had much control over my life. I just did what my parents told me to do. That's why I admire the way you live, Tina. It's really cool.
Cool, huh? That's so nice to hear. Thank you, Mark. But I also admire certain aspects of Mark, namely how he treats everyone equally with no discrimination. We met through work, although we aren't from the same company. In all this, Mark is genuinely kind and fair to everyone. If someone makes a mistake, he doesn't scold them, but offers immediate and accurate support. It appears Mark is well liked at his company. Friends say he's likely to get promoted sooner than others. I was unsure if I could be an equal match for someone like Mark, but the fact that he chose me means everything. I was so grateful that Mark, who had come to love me for who I am, was my husband. We spent every day committed to supporting each other. But there was one thing that worried me. It was the presence of Mark's mother, my mother-in-law. Apparently, my mother-in-law doesn't think too highly of me. I first sensed it when we visited Mark's family home to make our wedding announcement.
Dad, Mom, Tina is amazing. She even studied abroad in Japan when she was in college.
Mark casually mentioned this as we were introducing ourselves and making small talk. It seemed to touch a nerve with mother-in-law. "Oh, really?" she said, turning the conversation my way. "Tina, studying abroad in Japan sounds impressive. Must have cost you a fortune, huh?" "Well, I mostly paid for it with my part-time job earnings, but the university also gave me something like a scholarship." Interesting. So you can speak Japanese then? "I can manage everyday conversations, yes."
"Really? Studying abroad and all you got is everyday level conversation? Wasn't it a waste of money?"
Mother-in-law seemed to mock me, completely ignoring my modesty. Caught off guard by her blatant rudeness, I forced a smile. Mark, who had been watching, then stepped in, clearly a bit frustrated.
"Mom, Tina is just being modest. She speaks Japanese fluently and even uses it in her job."
"Wow, Mark, taking Tina aside over your own mother?"
"It's not about taking sides, Mom. You're just not getting it, so I'm setting the record straight."
"How terrible of you, making it sound like I'm the bad one. Mark, you're smart and good-looking. You could have found someone better." At this point, Mark's father, who was beside us, raised his voice.
"Enough already."
But Mark himself was even angrier. He looked down briefly before raising his voice at his mother.
Stop it! I chose Tina myself. How can you say such a thing?
I was just thinking of you, Mark.
If you were really thinking about me, you'd behave differently. I won't tolerate you insulting the person I chose, even if you're my mother.
Okay, I get it. I was wrong. Facing me, mother-in-law quietly said, I'm sorry. I didn't want any friction with his family moving forward, so I replied, It's fine. From that day on, there haven't been any significant issues with mother-in-law. Even though we haven't met, it's hard to say for sure. I was initially concerned about my relationship with mother-in-law, but now that we've been married for 2 months, those worries are fading away. Since shortly before we got married, my company switched to remote work, so I've been enjoying newlywed life while balancing it with housework. Then, one day, I had just finished my morning work and was eating lunch alone while watching TV. The doorbell rang. When I checked the monitor, my mother-in-law was standing there. Mother-in-law? What's going on? Caught off guard, I knew I couldn't just ignore it. I unlocked the door. A moment later, the doorbell rang again.
Bang, bang!
My mother-in-law was practically yelling.
Is Tina there?
I left my half-eaten lunch as is and rushed to the door. As soon as I opened the door, mother-in-law started yelling.
Hey, how long do you plan on making me wait?
Mother-in-law, what brings you here today?
What do you mean? Do I need a reason to visit?
Well, not exactly, but you didn't let me know you were coming, so it took me by surprise.
Huh. Why should I have to notify before visiting my son's house? I can come anytime, right?
I guess you could, but...
Oh, maybe this isn't obvious in Japan. In America, it's common courtesy to greet your mother-in-law with a smile no matter when she arrives.
My mother-in-law was brandishing some pretty outlandish opinions, making me force a tight smile.
You lack common sense as a daughter-in-law. First off, I never approved of Mark's marriage. Normally you should open the door within 10 seconds when your mother-in-law visits.
And so on. My mother-in-law kept spouting one outrageous claim after another. As a daughter-in-law, there was nothing I could do but listen quietly to avoid making the situation worse. Greet your mother-in-law with a smile whenever she arrives? I've never heard of that rule. And besides, isn't it common courtesy to at least give a heads up before showing up at someone's home, even if you're family? Why is this all coming back on me? I had all kinds of retorts in my mind, but I couldn't say them out. At my front door, dealing with my complaining mother-in-law, I can't help but wonder, when will she finally leave? But right after that thought, as if sensing my mood, mother-in-law begins to walk into the house, still wearing her hat. Whoa, mother-in-law, what are you doing?
Oh, what's the rush, Tina?
What do you mean, what's the rush? Why aren't you taking off your hat?
Why? This is normal for you, Tina.
Excuse me?
It's the Japanese style. You studied abroad, so I thought I'd match your style.
What? Mother-in-law grins like a villain and strides deeper into the house. Today's weather? Unfortunately, it's raining. Mother-in-law didn't have an umbrella and both her hat and clothes are wet. Before I know it, the room is soaking. Who does that? Seriously, and what's this about Japanese style? Is she making fun of the time I spent studying in Japan? From then on, mother-in-law starts dropping by unannounced. She always walks in wearing her hat and never improves, no matter how many times I ask her. Mother-in-law, please take off your hat.
What? It's Japanese style, remember?
This is America. If you continue like this, I can't let you in the house.
Oh my. How could you say that? I'm trying to accommodate you.
I'm just asking you to take off your hat.
Stop it! Don't you dare order me around. Got it? If you don't let me in, I'll tell Mark and make sure you two divorce.
With that, mother-in-law glares at me, making it clear she won't allow any dissent. I didn't think Mark would believe mother-in-law, but I also didn't want to strain their family relationship because of me, so I couldn't talk back. It's been a while since mother-in-law started her surprise visits, and she only pulls the Japanese-style stunt when I'm around, never when Mark is. I can't show Mark her antics, and nothing is changing. Even for me, there is a limit to my patience. I've been enduring so far, but I'm not sure I can take it any longer. I'm starting to feel that way. In the midst of all this, I decide to secretly record mother-in-law entering our home with her hat still on as evidence for Mark. I wait for the usual moment when mother-in-law comes over, hide my phone behind the vase at the entrance, and capture her barging in without a second thought. That same night. As soon as Mark comes home from work, I prepare to talk to him, but he speaks first.
Hey Tina, you know the year's almost over, right? My family is gathering at my parents' house for New Year's. Would you like to come?
Sure, that sounds great, but...
I'm glad you think so. Mom's looking forward to seeing you.
Really? Mother-in-law is?
Yeah, she said, I'd love to have a deeper connection with Tina. You know how she occasionally drops by. Apparently, she wants to strengthen her bond with you.
That's when it happened. Any shred of compassion I felt instantly vanished. Strengthen our bond? After treating me like dirt, she has the nerve to say that? I've kept quiet long enough. No more holding back. Mark, look at this. I take out my phone and show him the video, featuring mother-in-law's blatant disrespect and unfiltered comments. Mark is stunned, at a loss for words. I've kept silent about this, but mother-in-law always comes by when you're not home and just walks in with her hat on.
No way, but Mom said she wants to be closer to you.
I hate to break it to you, but she has no such intentions. She keeps looking down on me, even mocking me by saying it's the Japanese style.
I can't believe it. I'm so sorry, Tina. I had no idea.
It's fine. I didn't say anything before, but now I need your help.
With what?
I tell Mark my plan for a little revenge on mother-in-law. The operation will take place on New Year's Day, when the relatives gather at Mark's family home. After hearing the plan, Mark nods vigorously.
I'll do whatever it takes,
he says, committing to my scheme. 2 weeks later, the day of reckoning has arrived. To carry out our revenge amid a family gathering, Mark and I headed to his childhood home, arriving a bit later than the designated time. As we got out of the car and stood in front of the entrance, it was Mark's aunt, not his parents-in-law, who greeted us when he rang the doorbell.
Mark, it's been so long.
And is this Tina?
Yes, Auntie. It's good to see you. This is Tina. I'll introduce her to everyone now. Everyone's already here. Come on in, Tina. Don't be shy.
Prompted, we stepped inside. Mark and I kept our hats on as we entered his childhood home. Ignoring the confused looks from his aunt, we headed for the living room where everyone had gathered. Upon seeing us, my father-in-law raised his voice.
What are you doing?
Ah, father-in-law, long time no see.
It's not about long time no see. Why are you wearing hats indoors?
Oh, this? It's what we call Japanese style. As I said this, father-in-law's face turned red, and he looked furious. He glared at me and snapped.
You're mocking me. People like you don't deserve to be a daughter-in-law. Have some shame.
At father-in-law's shout, everyone turned their attention toward us. Glances of contempt came our way from all the relatives for my unconventional behavior. Among them, only my mother-in-law looked at me with disdain. Faced with this, I took a deep breath and firmly said to father-in-law, "It's something mother-in-law does. Is that a problem?"
What are you talking about?
Mother-in-law always does this at our place, calling it Japanese style, so I thought I'd try it out too. What do you think?
What? Mother-in-law does what?
It's something my mother-in-law does all the time at our house. She always says, "It's Japanese style," so I try to copy her. What do you think?
She did that?
Confused, father-in-law turned to mother-in-law and questioned,
What's going on here?
Mother-in-law, glaring at me in a flash, finally spoke up.
Stop it, Tina. Quit making things up.
Making things up? You're saying I'm lying?
Of course. I would never do something so out of touch with common sense.
Who are you to say that? Want to watch this? I pull out my phone from my pocket and play the damning video at full volume. Mother-in-law's face turns pale as she starts to shake uncontrollably.
This is how we do it in Japan. You better be thankful that I'm adapting to Tina, who lived in Japan. Could you at least prepare a cake? You're such a disappointment, daughter-in-law. I dare you to tell Mark. I'll get you guys divorced and you'll have nowhere to go.
The mother-in-law in the video spares no feelings, ruthlessly criticizing me. As the video plays, the disapproving stares from the relatives gradually shift from me to mother-in-law. The moment the video ends, father-in-law starts to tremble. Mother-in-law rushes to him, desperate to explain herself.
You see, this isn't what it looks like. What do you mean it's not? Doing something this outrageous in someone else's home? Aren't you ashamed? I'm sorry. I was just lonely because Mark always sides with Tina. Quiet. I can't be with someone like you anymore. We're getting a divorce. No way.
Father-in-law announces a divorce and mother-in-law is bombarded with criticism from the relatives. Then she runs to me, grabbing my arm, begging.
Oh, Tina, please say something on my behalf. I apologize for everything I've done, so please.
What are you talking about? An apology won't fix this.
What?
I forcefully shake off mother-in-law's hand from my arm and give her an icy stare. When she was shocked and her shoulders moistened, I spat the words at her mercilessly. Did you ever consider how I felt when you belittled me? Your words might be light, but they've been killing me inside. Sorry, so forgive me? Stop making a joke out of this.
Okay, Tina, let's just talk this out.
There's nothing left to discuss. No matter how many times you apologize, I'll never forgive you. The way you've threatened divorce and insulted me will never be forgotten. I could never see you as my mother-in-law. I have no intention of interacting with you ever again. Understand? I shout louder than ever. Having said my piece, Mark rubs my back and says,
Let's go home.
Pulling my hand. As we head towards the exit, I hear mother-in-law's voice apologizing multiple times, but I don't look back. I've resolved never to forgive her. Days later, after a 3-day break, father-in-law visits our home. According to him, it was a disaster after we left. Mother-in-law kept insisting, I did nothing wrong, only to face a torrent of criticism from relatives. Unable to take it anymore, father-in-law even went to the city office on New Year's Day to get divorce papers. He forced mother-in-law to sign them in front of relatives and submitted them. Mother-in-law was kicked out, her belongings sent to her parents' home. Already jobless and with no savings, she faced
heavy criticism even at her parents' home.
Well, that's no longer my problem. Mark and I talked it over and decided to block all communications from mother-in-law. We also decided to move to a different apartment to ensure we never encounter her again. I doubt we'll ever cross paths. After this experience, I vowed never to let anything like this happen again, especially if we ever have children.